one say that this complication, because a couple is always complicated, so it's just two aspects which come together, which resonate together, so you cannot ignore one part, as you said. You have to take into consideration both of them, but they are really not congruent. So this I would call it maybe complication. I have the feeling that this makes you feel how your perception works. So if it's a caption, we are so trained, and it's just a convention to take it into account, to then look at the sculpture again and read it in an extended way with this additional information that we got. And now in your case, as this does not give us the solution, but it adds still something. There's a resonance. It's not that you can just say, okay, there's somehow, it's not congruent, so it does not belong to each other. It belongs together, but you have to perceive what happens. So this is a possibility, and I think also for everyone it's very different. So that's why I think it's impossible to, for example, in a guided tour, to stand very long in front of one single sculptural object and a text, and because you cannot explain. It's about everyone perceiving, bringing also their set of knowledge and experience, and so is this the complication, the entry for a more conscious perceiving of perceiving the process of perception?
This may be an accidental side effect,
yeah.
But it's not necessarily the intention with which the work was conceived. So this work in particular with heritage studies, it was conceived because of a feeling that these ancient artifacts or historical artifacts, which dated back, thousands of years in the past, still had a kind of strange resonance that wasn't just about history and wasn't just about the past, but felt very present. And this kind of strange feeling of what does it mean to think about the past, and this whole project started with this question, like why do this, why turn and look at objects from the past, because it's for me there was something very unsettling about this need and also suspicious, and so this is why I started the project to really interrogate this feeling of and the term heritage studies, I used it not because these objects have to do with my heritage, they really don't, because it's only to describe a certain relationship to the past. Because when you say history, it has a very different resonance than when you say heritage studies, and heritage studies as a field is always defined as a return to the past with a functional or practical end to the present. So for example, like you have something like UNESCO where, you excavate a culture in order to prove that a people exist, or to change preservation laws, or to do something very concrete in the present. So I like the term, I used it because of that. And the relationship between, let's say, the caption, which is the text, and the sculpture display, started from the sculptural display. So I started with the original object, and I thought, okay, what if I, through remaking this original object, try to understand why these ancient or historical artifacts are so relevant. And in the process of this remaking, let's say almost all of them, not most of them, almost all of them looked nothing like what I started with. So that was interesting, is that you think about remaking and then you end up with something that doesn't really look like the original. And I thought to apply the same criteria to the caption. So all the captions are of existing objects. I do not make them up, I do not invent them, they exist, but I write them in my own language, and I only include the information that I think is relevant. And that's why for some of them you would find the location, for others not. For some of them, let's say, more expanded list of the material. For others it would be, let's say, wood or metal, as opposed to very specific. So I tried to be very rigorous about how to write the text and how to make the works with this idea of relevance at the forefront. But I should also stress that they are studies, because I think this is really important, so that they're not conclusive form. And even though you say that each person comes and they bring with them, of course, their own baggage and history and the way of seeing things, I do kind of hope for, let's say, for more, maybe shared reading, and that even though they are made very much with my own subjectivity, I try to follow a rigorous process. So even though you rely on the imagination, you have this hope that if someone tried to do the same thing, they would end up with the exact same form. Which, of course, you have no way to prove it. But at the same time, by labeling it study, then you also open it up as a conversation where someone can come and tell you, no, you're totally wrong. It should be smaller, bigger, and different material.
But I think this aspect is it's very interesting, this study or proposition, and this idea that you actually do a bit the same. So it's again a half part confirming the convention to deal with the past and to bring it in an exhibition space, to display it and to claim the relevance for today. But I would say again you complicate it, because in shaping a form or in saying this form, which might really be very different from the one that you are describing in the text, is the relevant form of the object that has been like this in the past. So it's a bit the same process that is happening in museums when historical artifacts are shown, but it's maybe radicalizing this process and making very visible, like maybe one could even say turning into form a blind spot, like putting it at the center. Because normally this relationship is completely invisible or made invisible between the nowadays look on the past and the real object. And I think the question is also how much relevance can an object take, or how much do you want to narrate through an object? No, this is also part of heritage studies, isn't it? That it's really a lot of weight also that we put on objects, and we take them they have to stand in for really big ideas and proofs somehow for something that has happened.